companies and the EMS to come and make a presentation to the board before Julia and I start working on the tentative budget. So we have Art Lyons who's going to do the presentation. He is the president of Malta Ridge Volunteer Fire Company. With us also is Rick Burke, who is the chief of Round Lake Hose Company, and Pete Shaw, who is the chief of Fire Companies of Malta. Joey? She's, yeah, not just the
Don't say
admin.
that,
You're
yeah.
in a very important part of both organizations,
Absolutely.
so. Okay,
All right. Thanks, Cynthia, for your opportunity. So this is our first workshop that I know of, and I hope to do this every year going forward. This should be an annual thing where we present details about the fire companies. So I hope it meets the need, and I plan on talking maybe just 10, 15 minutes. I'm hoping there are lots of questions during it, but I know we have a hard stop at 5:30. So I'll just go through. So the mission of the fire companies is to provide the town with exceptional emergency services. I think we can all agree that's the mission. I think where the workshop comes in is, well, how do we provide that? There's obvious benefits to having exceptional emergency services, saving life, saving property. There's also a lot of hidden benefits, things like ISO ratings, insurance services office. If there's a high rating, it reduces people's home insurance. So the fire companies get rated by that organization, and that's reflected in folks' insurance. So who does the emergency services? Well, there's about 50 people from Malta Ridge Volunteer Fire Company, about 70 from Round Lake. The photos are the chief officers from each of the two companies. I'm going to use the word company and department interchangeably. There's subtle differences. We won't get into that here, but those are the chief officers. Also at the bottom are the LOSAP numbers, Length of Service Award Program numbers. About 70% of the volunteers in each company make the minimum numbers to get that Length of Service Award Program. So that's luckily, the town of Malta offers that. It's an incentive for the recruitment and retention. None of the services, we couldn't provide any service without the volunteers of both companies. So that's an important incentive. And we're exploring some new incentives like stipend programs, which there's some new laws on the books to guide us on how to do stipends, but we're also going to explore some other type of stipend programs, which is reflected in the 2025 budget. So that's the membership. The stations. So where do the memberships work out of? In the upper left-hand corner is the Round Lake, the main station for, Malta Ridge. At the bottom left is the main station for Round Lake. And then just recently, in 2014, we built the shared station. So that allowed both fire companies to work out of one station, which was a great improvement. Those volunteers we talked about, so now a common practice at the shared station is you might find a driver in a Round Lake truck, and you might find Malta Ridge firefighters on that truck, and vice versa. So that allows, a quicker response in the town. So that's been working out well. Malta Ridge still has a small substation. We use it just for storage. It was built in 1978. So part of our budget is talking about capital improvements, trying to expand. That building's pretty much at the end of its life. We need to make some improvements or sell it off. So that's what we're trying to do. Any questions on the stations? All right, so.
The one in the top left and the one in the bottom left, they're still operable?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. These are our main stations. So the main station of Malta Ridge is on 5 Hearn Road. I don't know much more to say about that, but and also on Curry Road, I think is the. So that station was basically, there was a station there that was built like in the late 70s. that was torn down, and a brand-new station was put in the same spot.
And you both house equipment, it's at the shared station.
Yeah, towards the end of the presentation, you'll see some photos from inside. It's a large station, 4 bays. You'll see Round Lake and Malta Ridge trucks and apparatus in there. We both work out of there. So we need those stations to house equipment and mainly apparatus. So the fleet for both Malta Ridge and Round Lake are similar but different. Per the contract that we sign with the town, we're required not to duplicate effort. There are some apparatus that are similar. They need to be for the manpower, but there are things like tankers and ladder trucks and tower trucks that are different and not duplicated. So these are the two fleets. The insurance value are each over $5 million. And again, we are maintaining those to standard. Any little thing that goes wrong gets sent out and corrected, because those are all first line apparatus. We don't have any apparatus in reserve.
And what do you mean by insurance value?
So both companies insure with Amsure. So if for whatever reason a truck were damaged beyond repair, the insurance would provide that value for us to replace that truck.
Okay, so is that presumed to be what the vehicle would be replaced for?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep. Yeah, because you can see, so 388 I can speak to for Malta Ridge. It was purchased in 2013 for 1.2 million. Right now it's insured for 2 million. And that's really what drives, we're going to get to the budget part later, but replacing apparatus is really our largest expense. Okay. So how often do we use the apparatus that I just showed you? It's increasing. In the last 10 years, both fire companies have almost doubled or more than doubled their calls. So like, for example, Malta Ridge in 2015, about 300 calls. Last year, 2023, we're at 650 calls. So there's a bunch of reasons for that, but there is no sign of plateau, all right? So I saw EMS, I used that as kind of a benchmark from the same time frame to 2015 to 2023. It was a 30% increase, but for the fire service, it's been a 100% increase in calls.
So maybe you don't know, but do you anticipate that the increase in calls with that steady linear line, that's pretty steep?
Yeah.
Is that as a result of does it mirror the increase in population?
No, well, I don't think it's a population thing. I think it's how we're responding to calls, the need for automatic mutual aid. There's a number of factors which is driving the number of calls up.
What is the number one reason they're going up? Are they just normal calls or something out of the ordinary that's going on?
Normal calls.
Is it just that we've got iPhones and easy to hit, 911? Is it that easy?
I would say there's multiple factors. It's really hard to pin it on one thing.
What are some of the factors?
Population,
Yeah.
development, traffic, lack of volunteers throughout the county. Because of that, because in the last one I'm speaking to is lack of volunteers in the whole county, and because of that, and also NFPA, National Fire Protection Association standards they don't have a lack of volunteers in the city, but manpower. So we provide on a daily basis mutual aid to multiple departments throughout the county, as do they throughout the whole county. I mean, it's a whole county thing. And that does drive our calls up a little bit because of the fact that, there's other places that get 3 or 4 people during the day. Well, you put their 3 or 4 people together with our 3 or 4 people and Round Lake's 3 or 4 people, well, now we have a crew. But without that mutual aid, we're all, and that's a countywide thing, we're all in trouble.
Yeah.
What is the quantity of the the numbers up here that are mutual aids. I mean,
Yeah, maybe.
20.
So we can, I think, we may be able to get that number out.
Probably about 25% of
Yeah.
our calls
Yeah,
are out of, well, not even 25%. I'm gonna say probably about 10% of our calls are out of town mutual aid. That's either to Stillwater, Milton, Ballston, City of Saratoga, Greenfield, Clifton Park, Half Moon, those are the only ones that we go on an automatic basis.
And what is the demand that triggers that? Is it
so any
lack
emergency,
of
so any emergency in
volunteers?
those zones, if they call 911, and it gets dispatched to a, emergency fire service type call, where our tones are gonna go off and those volunteers are gonna respond. So we talked, Monday through Friday, 6 AM to 6 PM, it's automatic mutual aid. Both Malta Ridge and Round Lake are gonna respond to those calls to get the right number of folks on those apparatus to respond.
Now, would that count as one call per fire
each.
department?
Yep,
So one incident, but two calls?
yep.
What's the, approximately, what is the cost to send a truck out for one call, averaged out?
Well, I mean, straight cost is just fuel. I mean, we bill the town for, part of the contract is,
Insurance,
I
I don't think
There's-
we've ever broken it down for
Per
how much
call.
it costs per call.
yeah,
Because they're all staffed by volunteers.
right.
So the EMS is different because they're staffed by
I'm referring
paid
to
personnel.
fixed costs,
Yeah.
fuel, insurance, and equipment.
We can, I mean, we have the operating budget. I guess we could just do straight math and figure out that, that number, but.
So the reason that I had asked the question is, as the board is looking over the next couple of years, 2-3 years, for increases in budget.
Right.
What I was trying to get at is there a correlation between the increase in calls and the budget? Or is the budget almost independent because most of the costs are fixed anyway?
Most of the costs are fixed. So what's driving our budget up is the cost of apparatus is the number one driver. And I'll get to that.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Is the cost for equipment, is some of that due to mandates by the state? Or is it equipment out of date, has to be replaced?
So there are new mandates, so the equipment that we buy, I would say, is safer today than it was 10 years ago. And that's some of it's through mandates, some of it's, we would like all the equipment we have, we want as safe as possible. So it's hard to say it's just driven by safety or, one particular mandate, but again, it's apparatus is the number one driver. And the apparatus that we had, when I first joined 12 years ago, our apparatus are safer today than they were. Different ways of holding the SCBA and the cab, automated governors on the pump, things like that are all safer than they were 12 years ago.
But to go back, yes, we have an extreme amount of unfunded mandates that we have, and they change every single year. Upcoming, that's on the books right now, is a change in the OSHA regulations for the fire service, which is going to have a huge impact on the volunteer fire service if enacted as written, to the point where, I mean, I'm not that I am concerned about it, but other people that I've talked to in the service are trying to figure out how they're even gonna survive.
Was that regarding the Scott
So
Act?
that's regarding A to Z. Everything that's involved with the fire service, from recruitment to training to equipment to apparatus. The only thing that it doesn't really get into is operations. But
Why do you
everything
think
else,
OSHA just went from soup to nuts to change a lot of stuff and requirements?
right,
Do you know why? That's,
because they felt
like
like,
it, you know?
yeah,
The standard hadn't been touched in, a long time,
Right.
20, 25 years, so now they're, trying to update that standard.
and just to know, the reason Chief Burke left is because we
Call.
have a call.
Motor vehicle accident.
He went out with the lights on, we figured.
So calls, I only have a couple more slides. I really appreciate the questions. I don't want to stop those questions, but I'm going to finish those slides. Some of them we may get answered with the slides, but NIFRS, so the National Fire Incident Reporting System. So both fire companies are required to report the types of incidents we respond to. False alarms, so we go to a lot of alarms. We don't know that they're false, but we respond either way. Good intent calls, things like smells or whatnot is a good percentage, 26%. Rescues, car accidents, entrapment, we go to those as well. So that's what where Chief Burke is going to right now. Fires about 11%, so 72 of our calls were classified as fire. And then there's smaller percentages. So that was 2023 numbers, so about 650 calls there.
That percentage on actual fires, you said is about 11%
11%
overall?
overall, yep.
And our percentages compared to national trends is just about the same.
Consistent?
It's very consistent with people. The actual fires are not occurring as much because of code enforcement and the way things are built. But as you can see, the good intent, the rescue, and the false alarms are there, especially because, rescue calls, out of those rescue calls, probably 99% of them are due to vehicle accidents. The other ones are attributed to probably elevator rescues. Are, come into play when we have development. The false alarms are false alarms. And then the good intent calls are alarms that are doing what they're supposed to be doing. We have a couple of properties that are in town that we frequently fly to, and they're frequently unintentional good intent. But what it is it's burnt food, and they're multi-story, multi-residence, and because of their occupancy and so forth, they have to have that type of alarm system. But unfortunately, with that type of occupancies and so forth, come the good intent calls. They're not false alarms because the system is doing what it's supposed to be doing, but they're unintentional calls.
Thank you.
I did want to mention about volunteerism. So in Malta, we are lucky that we have the number of volunteers. If you look at the national average for volunteers in the Northeast in the same size town from 10K to 25K, the average town would get about 1 volunteer per 1,000. We have over 4 volunteers, like 4.6 volunteers per 1,000. So we're still, whatever we're doing it right. Luckily, we have a lot of volunteers compared to similar towns in the state. So we want to keep that. We want to keep that going. In the 2009 master plan, you're talking about some of the budgets and things. They forecasted we'd already have paid firemen in Malta. If you look at that 2009 master plan, so we're still trying to do it. And I think we're doing it well. I'm really proud of what the volunteers do. So we're keeping that up. So I think this is my second to last slide. So cost. So this is the budget. The blue dots are what Malta Ridge and Round Lake were contracted to from 2015 till 2024. We had a 3-year fixed contract from 2021 to 2023. So that's where that plateau occurred. The gray dots are national inflation. So if we had just applied national inflation to our budget since 2015, we'd be in the 1.17 million range for each fire company. What we're trying to do is close that gap. Where we're at is not sustainable. The actual inflation cost of fire service type things like apparatus, I talked about that ladder truck that was in 1.2 million in 2013. It's projected to be around 2.5 million in a few years to replace that. So we have budgeted, money to replace that apparatus, but we need to get back at least to the curve. So the budget we've submitted, both Round Lake and Malta Ridge, would at least get us back to that 1.17 range for each company.
So help me understand something. So the blue dots is the actual cost.
Well, yeah, the contract that we signed with, that's the actual money we
So
got.
it's not your actual costs, it's the contract cost.
It's the contract cost, yeah.
And the gap is not a deficit.
The gap is, we are trying to keep pace with national inflation. So like our operation costs, it's a gap between where we would be if we had just stayed with national inflation.
Right. So really, I guess what I'm getting at, it's not a budget deficit. It's a reduction in your ability to deliver services at the rate you'd like to because it didn't
Yes.
keep up with inflation.
Yeah, we have
Got it.
slowly, each year, cut, things out of our, yep.
Okay.
You're not printing fire trucks, in other words.
No. Big paper fire trucks.
And part of the reason for that, as I understand it, was because you entered into a 3-year contract in 2021, and then we had the unexpected
Large jumps in
skyrocketing
inflation.
inflation over, inflation was what, 8%, 9%? Yeah,
And in the fire service cost, it was 35%.
right. And there was no escalator in that contract. You got the same amount for the 3 years.
And it's not an issue that you folks have anything to do with, but on the national scale, fire trucks are our biggest expense, is the fact that more and more of the national fire truck manufacturers have consolidated into,
Monopoly?
yeah, well, I didn't want to use that word, but two or three, and the prices are being controlled. And it's like, here's what you can have, and this is what it's gonna cost. If you don't like it, too bad. And that's where the fire service is right now. And again, it's not a local thing for you folks, but it's just, it comes down to the local thing.
Reality.
You're saying it's not our fault?
No, it's not your fault.
We'll take the blame.
It seems like the cost of our fire and our EMS, the biggest burden seems to be on equipment. Going
Fire-
up in cost.
Fire
between
certainly
fire,
is equipment.
EMS, heart monitors, it's getting more technical, but at the same time, it's getting more expensive.
So that is a photo inside the shared station. And we're getting towards the end of my time. But our biggest challenge, these are some of our challenges. The biggest one's the apparatus replacement costs. But we are trying to, maintain recruitment and retention. It costs a lot to, rent homes, et cetera. We have lost some volunteers to other communities. We want to start a stipend program to start attracting more volunteers. We talked about the call volume. So we have about the same number of people that we did 10 years ago, but they're going to twice the number of calls. So that's stressful. We want to build up the volunteers. We talked about apparatus costs. NFPA recommends a 15-year replacement plan. Our plan works out to be about 18 years. Every 3 years, we're replacing a big apparatus, and we have about 6. So every 3 years, we're scheduled to replace an apparatus. And we still need to do capital improvements. 1993 is when our main station was built. We need to be planning ahead for, when that station's no longer serviceable for us. So we're looking at those, the capital improvements. And then the last thing I'll mention is the fire protection master plan. There are some really good recommendations in there, some good guidance that company put together for the town. And that was really one of the reasons why the shared station got built. That was one of the recommendations, and that was done. So we need to continue working on that.
Do either department receive monies from other municipalities for services or calls that you respond to in, say, Saratoga Springs or Clifton Park?
The Village of Round Lake, I believe, has a contract to provide service to a portion of the town of Ballston. But that's only the Village of Round Lake.
So we do not collect money
We don't
for,
get anything.
if we go to mutual aid in Saratoga Springs.
Mutual aid is a countywide thing where on the county level it is enacted, it's signed by, well, you folks approved the contract, but mutual aid is, it works back and forth. When we have a structural fire call here in town, and it holds true for both organizations, we automatically call for a crew from the city, 24/7.
Okay.
For firefighter safety purposes.
So for funding purposes, Malta Ridge receives money only from Malta, and Round Lake receives money mostly from Malta, but also from the town of
I
Boston.
think it is, and I can't comment, I don't know how much it is, it's not, I'm not involved with the village at all. So
Okay,
the village, and that's a contract with the village and the town of Boston.
okay, thank you.
What else, go?
I got a few, I was waiting for last, but, in rapid fire Jeopardy,
Okay.
System, rating for, you said you got a rating, and who gives that rating? What's our rating for fire?
So the Insurance Services Office, they're based out of New Jersey. They service the country, even internationally. So insurance companies use the ISO, that's Insurance Services Office, to come in and do the community is graded. The fire department is part of that grade. So like there's 105 points.
Where do we stand?
So out of the 50 points, we're pretty good. The rating comes from areas where if you live within 5 miles of a fire department or within 1,000 feet of a water supply. It's funny how water supply plays into this as well, but that rating is based on those things. So we're pretty high in the.
Is that the category we're pretty high, or is it good, bad, excellent, just pretty high? I mean, do we get a number, A, B, C?
Rating goes from 1 to 9.
What to know?
Okay, 1, there's like 2 or 3 departments in the United States that are 1s.
What are we?
We're 4.
All right, pretty good.
In most areas. In rural areas where there's no water, we're 9. Because you're a long ways away from the firehouse and there's no water. And there's no way to get it below 9 either.
And that's a
Without
significant part of Malta.
Without water, because when you look at that rating system, I think we said 50 to 60% of that rating system is all water.
Right.
The
It's
rest-
50%. So that rating that he gave you is 50% is the fire department, 40% is water supply, which we have no control over. 10% is emergency communications.
I get it, yeah.
Okay,
Niagara
so
Falls got a one, I got it.
We don't have they didn't give us in particular a report card, but
The stipend program you mentioned.
Yeah.
Is there a ballpark dollar amount per month you're looking for? What is it?
so it's going to be based on points again. So the more a person volunteers, the more money they'll get. So we just wrote down what we think the stipend program is going to be, and we budgeted $60,000 for that stipend program. We already have a gas card. If you come to a call, if you make a certain number of calls per month, we give a person a gas card. It's $35 per month. If you make a certain number of calls, you get that $35.
What would that stipend be like per day for, a guy that comes to the house every day?
Well, I think if a person makes the calls, they're going to get like $180, for that quarter. We're thinking of quarterly. So
Do you guys train with the National Guard to do water bucket operations? For
We don't,
fires?
we've never have. I know that, I think maybe they come out, they do it out around lake at times.
I've dipped the bucket in that lake, that's why.
But
And
we've
I didn't
never-
talk to you,
Yeah.
interoperability radios, I don't know if that's still,
I don't know if we are interoperable with the National Guard, to tell you the
that's
truth.
our biggest problem. I used to fly Black Hawks, and I used to do water bucket
Yep.
operations. And
I
that's
know
our
that
biggest
every once in a
problem
while.
is getting hand signals when to drop the bucket instead of talking on a radio,
Right.
getting normal people, but can't talk to the cops
Yeah.
or the fire department. So that still exists.
we haven't drilled,
I got it.
yeah, we just haven't drilled with it.
Still exists.
Maybe I can't use my influence to close that gap. Last thing, what do you guys decide, what is the budget differential you're asking from last year to this year for each firehouse?
So
I'm
each,
looking at the budget, I haven't seen it yet.
so each fire company is asking for $150,000 more than last year. Last year's budget was 1.02 million. So we want 1.17 million each to get to, back to at least where national inflation was.
I'm good.
I wondered if you could give me a feel for how fire services will be, and maybe other emergency services as well, will be affected by the expansion of the Global Foundries plant.
Well, the biggest, we operate there, we train with Global Foundries. It's gonna have an impact on us. It's minimal as far as on-site minimal. What happens is the collateral, what I call the collateral damage from
Population.
traffic and development throughout the rest of the town that comes with that. Because the ERT there is very good, and
RT is what?
emergency response team.
Does they have vehicles?
They have vehicles, they have an emergency response team that we train with on a regular basis. Both organizations train with on a regular basis. They're on site, and they're actually talking about becoming part of the county hazardous materials response plan, so that they would come off-site. Up until now, they do not come off-site for anything. It's that, but the expansion is gonna be the collateral, is gonna be the big thing. We may have to do a little bit more there, but I don't see it affecting us. We might get 1 or 2 more calls there a year, but the collateral in the rest of the town is where we're gonna see it, and
Is it, is it more what they're dealing with, if you're allowed to tell me this in public or whatever, is more likely spills than fires?
yeah, most of their calls are spills and things like that over there. It's very minor, and they're very, very safety oriented. So their protocols for spills are, their level is up here, where you spill a glass of water on the floor, you wipe it up with a cloth.
That's not happening there.
No. They are very, very safety conscious there.
It's pretty rare that we get called there.
And, yeah, very rarely do we get called there, but
But the populations with the, yeah.
here and there.
I saw in, when you're listing the different vehicles you have, Round Lake has a ladder truck, I believe you have a tower truck, those are the 2 most expensive vehicles. And you're anticipating at $2 million approximately to replace that.
2.5 million to
When the
replace.
time comes, yes.
Are the fire departments setting aside money each year to build up for that purchase?
Yes, that's included in the budget.
Is that $60,000 stipend plan part of this one, falls in at 150?
Yes.
Anybody else? Any questions? Thank you, Art. Thanks for being here, you guys. It was a very eye-opening presentation, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds great.
Julia didn't fall over back there, so.